Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today's guest brings a unique perspective to this journey we share, one rooted not only in resilience and service, but in personal transformation. Marla Ballard isn't a veteran in the traditional sense, but as the wife of a decorated Army major who was wounded in Iraq, she's lived the sacrifice, the chaos of deployment, and the emotional weight of transition firsthand. When a roadside bomb injured her husband Chris during fierce fighting in Mosul, Marla found herself standing at a crossroads, facing not just the challenge of her husband's recovery, but the loss of income, identity, and community that came when the uniform came off. In those moments, she redefined what it meant to serve. Today, Marla is the CEO of YU2Shine, a global leader in quantum personal development, named a pioneer in its field by Forbes. She's also the director of Unconquerable Me, and the logo for that is unique. We're going to dive into that later, where she channels a deep passion for helping veterans and entrepreneurs reconnect with their inner strength. With over 30 years in business and certifications that bridge science and transformation, including one of the rare certificates of science in theta healing, Marla helps others rise beyond their limiting beliefs to reclaim their purpose. Her journey from Army wife to international best-selling author and transformative coach is a powerful reminder that healing, growth, and fulfillment are possible, especially for those who have given so much. Marla, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Adam. This is amazing.
Yeah,
That's
of
an
course.
amazing introduction. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So first question for everybody, where did you grow up and what inspired you to, aside from being an Army spouse, what inspired you to really dive deep and do this work that you're doing with veterans?
Gosh, I grew up in Kentucky, and so I'm a farm kid.
We're at in Kentucky.
Owensboro, Kentucky.
Seriously?
Kentucky. Yeah.
I was born and raised in Poseyville, Indiana. So I was actually born in Evansville, right across the bridge.
Oh, so you're right across the river.
Right across the river.
We used to go shopping.
we used to come to Owensboro to buy cars and cigarettes because the taxes were cheaper. You asked me, so in the green room, for those that are listening, Marla was like, we were talking about why I started this podcast. And this is exactly why, because you never know who you're going to connect with and how small the world actually is. So wild that we're really from the same place.
It is. And I know Poseyville. That's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Anyway, so what is it about the work that you're doing and what led you to that from your time as a kid in Owensboro to now?
It is kind of interesting, isn't it? So I really loved being a farm kid, and I ended up actually attending University of Kentucky and studying equine science there. And so by 25, I was working heavily in the racehorse industry. I just always was a go-getter and a hard worker, and I had a lot of success at a very young age at that, and I absolutely loved it. But for me, I will always maintain that was probably one of the most fun and cool jobs a person could ever have, truly. But it wasn't a calling for me. And one of the things that I have admired about so many of the veterans I've met is that it was such a deep calling to serve their country. And over the years, as after Chris got wounded, we had to figure out a lot of things. But during that time, we ended up coming to the Washington, D.C. area because he was stationed in Arlington while he was going through his medical board and recovering. And, this is the biggest place I'd ever lived in my life, right? Small town farm kid.
Wild.
And, yeah, totally wild. And so, in having to figure things out. But as I started businesses and started really doing the things I was up to, I interacted with so many veterans in the Northern Virginia community and business. There are just so many in this region, right? And as I was serving on different boards of directors and we were talking about issues, supporting veterans' employment to veterans starting businesses, what I just became so deeply aware of is the incredible individuals that the veterans are. There's such a strength, a resilience, a courage, right, that's there. And I think that, and a commitment, discipline, right, like the virtues are just extraordinary. And what that person can bring to everything they do is is so valuable. And I think sometimes that gets a little bit lost during the period of transitioning out of the military and into the private sector, because there's so many things that shift and change around that. And so for me, what I have really felt a deep passion about since about 2007 is to really find ways, tools, capacities to help veterans mentally, physically, emotionally, financially.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that if we do that, the elevation of what each individual has within them will contribute so much to the world in just untold ways that we can't even imagine.
I love that so much. So you weren't with Chris for his whole military career, right? If I
No,
remember
I came in
correctly.
right at the end.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about what was, first of all, what was that like for you? Just kind of, I assume that he had probably had, at least was a captain at the time,
Yeah.
maybe a major already. So he's already ingrained in the officer world, and here you are, and we could speak to. You can probably really speak to how some of these military spouses wear their husbands' ranks and aren't always welcoming to the new guys and
Yeah, I've
gals.
experienced that.
And so let's talk about what was that like for you, being a small town Owensboro, Kentucky girl, moving to the DC area or wherever you were when you met him, what was that like for you? Like how did that upend your world? What did you learn from like stepping into the military world? Because it's different. It's very different.
It is very different. Well, I will say this. You're right. Small town and a whole different world. But one thing I've always had is grit. I was gritty.
You have to
And
be when you come from the places that we come from. I
yeah,
mean,
I was gritty. And also, to be quite frank with you, working in racehorses was not exactly the softest kind of world to be in breeding barns and breeding sheds that with where I often was at that time one of the only women in
mhm.
a lot of situations. So so
Yeah.
that took a lot of grit and a lot of 4 a.m. in the freezing cold temperatures, long hours doing things. So that I had, and I knew I had it by that point, right? Which was a really good thing. Um, for me, though, it was just, I think my biggest concern was that I could adapt and not make any missteps.
Yeah.
I had a goofy vision of what I thought being a military spouse was, because I really sort of thought it was like from the movies, like we were going to wear white gloves and go to tea parties, which is sounds
From like
ugly
the
and stupid.
40s. Yeah.
Like it's so funny because so many things that we see in video movies, and I love movies, by the way, but it's there's iconic images are created, and that's just sort of how you code in what you think it's going to be, and of course there's nothing like that. But especially when I was invited to the first coffee, of course I thought it was going to be like the southern. I don't know. It was a completely false image that's funny to me now, but that was the image I had. But what I found was other women that were like me. A lot of athletes, a lot of sports-minded go-getters, and I thought they were amazing. And we had a lot of, even under the circumstances of the hardship of looming deployment, we found ways to have fun together and to help each other. And I think another gift I've had by being gritty and a self-starter is if I don't find a community present, I'll seek to create it, because I know on a very deep level that we can't do anything by ourselves. We think we do, right? And I give everybody full credit for their success, but it also takes people along the way helping and supporting us to get there.
Prime example, you coming on this show. I mean, you are a piece of what will eventually be the success of this show. Like without guests, I don't have a show. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that's a really good example, because we all think that we all do it by ourselves, and we don't see, how Marla is currently helping Adam grow a podcast. You know what I mean? Like it's simple acts like that. So I love that so much. I really want to get, you mentioned looming deployment. I did 4 deployments to include I may have even been in Mosul when Chris got hurt. If his deployment was the 07-08 timeframe.
He was there in 2004.
Okay, so I was actually into Crete in 2000, into 2004, 2005. So I did 3 to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan. I know what deployments are like as the soldier. What are deployments like on the flip side of that, at the home front, as a spouse? I think I know, but I don't have a clue. It's constant worry. I remember particularly, then it was always in the news cycle. The 24-hour news cycle was always Iraq on TV, more Iraq than Afghanistan. And so speak from your perspective, like you're a new military wife. You've probably never been through a deployment before.
No.
Maybe some of the other wives have, or spouses, we'll just say, because I know it goes both ways. It's more common, wives. But what is that like? Like, did they try to prepare you? Did they try to give you an advice, if there was advice? Because 04 is kind of early,
yeah, they weren't good at it yet.
Right. So just give me your perspective and like what was going through your mind, and like how did that experience change you, to include the injury?
Yeah, well, it upended a lot. First of all, when we look at major life stressors, anytime you're moving or switching careers or starting or ending a relationship, those are all actually big life events, right?
Yeah.
They're big life events. And so when you're looking at marrying, moving, and then having that as part of your life, that was bringing in a lot of stress all at once. So I just want to acknowledge that. And that's for both, right? That goes both ways. It wasn't just as a spouse, he was having that too. So I really want to acknowledge that. And then the other thing that I've learned, it's amazing to look back, because now we're looking back a lot of years, right? We're looking back 20 years.
Yeah, God, it's 20 years. Wow.
Yeah, with the lens of growth and perspective of 20 years, right?
Right.
And so it's completely different. But what I understand now that I didn't then is we really operate in either fear or love, faith, right? And so what they did, there was a lot that was done to attempt to support us, but so much of it was done through creating fear.
Okay.
There was just a lot of fear mongering around what a deployment was going to be, what we were going to experience. And I do believe that the people that were having, like when we would go, they would have all these spouse events and things where we had to go and be a part of things. And I very much appreciate the creation of those, because if they hadn't been something that was happening on a regular basis, I probably wouldn't have made friends with the other women in the same way. Yeah. Right. So I'm very grateful for that structure. But at the same time, in trying to give us a realistic view, I felt like they created a lot more fear than was necessary.
I could see that.
What a deployment was be. Things like, the press is going to call you and people might stalk you and like, I mean, just crazy stuff. And
none of that ever happened.
No, none of that ever happened. But we were fed that, in so many conversations leading up to deployment. So you not only was there just immense fear of losing the person you love, and the fear, and then the other thing is the fear of the unknown, right? Because I wasn't the one training. I wasn't the one knowing that I had the skill set or the tools or the ability. So much of what was going on was OPSEC, right? Like he couldn't talk about it or tell me. And even if he could, he wasn't going to, because it would just make me, more stressful.
Right.
But and so it also creates this big nebulous cloud of, I don't even have any idea what this is coming at me.
Yeah.
And anytime we have that, our natural, that's what makes a good horror movie, right? The best horror movies aren't where they show you the horror. It's where they just build up and let you fill in the blank in your own mind.
Yeah. The fear of the unknown it'll drive you crazy.
Yeah. So I would say if I could point to one thing that was insanely difficult, it was that.
Awesome. So I created this show originally saying that the path back to purpose for veterans was through entrepreneurship. And as I started recording early episodes and diving into those transcripts, and just the same problems kept coming over and over and over again, I realized really the problem is in the transition out of the military back into civilian life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got a unique background to be able to kind of unpack a lot of this stuff. And so I want to talk about your husband's transition and even your transition, because it does affect the family as much as it affects the service member. So what was, obviously your husband went through a med board just like I did, so, and I'm not sure what year did he go through all of that? Asking you to
Let's
remember.
see. Yeah, no, he deployed in 2005. And let me get this straight. Deployed, I believe, in October of 2004, was wounded in January of 2005. And then his med board was almost 2 years or more.
Okay, so I was med boarded in 2015, and the med board process was still jacked up. Like it took sometimes 28 months to get guys out, even if they didn't have to go, to a place like Walter Reed or whatever, right? So understanding that your husband was injured, from what I understand, pretty severely, and had to go, do some hospital time and all of that to then recover and then get to a point where they can med board him out, and then
it was odd though, because he actually, even after getting wounded, he had 2 more company commands.
What?
Because, well, at that time, it wasn't, even though he almost got cut in half, basically.
Right.
It took a whole year for him to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really just kind of parked him in the hospital without patient care to recover, and then sent him to Arlington to get him off the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so he actually took a company command at Arlington.
Okay.
He only had that command for about 6 weeks. And then the story broke in the Washington Post about the bad conditions at Walter Reed.
Oh, I remember that.
Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember that. I was on a deployment when all of that. I mean, like, so a lot of the major events of the last 20 years, Katrina, Walter Reed, the Wounded Warrior Project, Scandal, I was on deployments for a lot of that. So I probably don't have good knowledge of all of that stuff. I just know of it.
They published a lot of stories where they were showing pictures of mold growing on the walls and just these horrible conditions at the hospital. Anyway, after 6 weeks at Arlington, he got a call, and 2 weeks later was retasked to go help set up the Wounded Warrior Transition Unit at Walter Reed.
Awesome. That was such a good program throughout all the posts when we were going through, because it actually allowed, it's actually what I think they should do with transitioning service members now. It allowed for them to focus solely on their appointments and taking care of themselves to get ready to finish out the med board process and get ready to integrate back into civilian life, without going through what I had to go through and just being a puppet for the unit, just use me and abuse me until, the day that I get orders cut, and then good luck, bye. You know what I mean? So I love that he was a part of that. And so anyway, he goes through 2 years of med board, takes company command and all of that. Did you see the identity loss? Did you see the purpose loss? Did you see the loss of? I know.
Not until he got out, but I really want to acknowledge this because this is important to share. So he didn't actually drop paperwork for his med board on an inability to pass a PT test, I don't think, until 2009.
Wow.
He did that year in command at Walter Reed, and I want you to know, it was one of the most stressful positions I've ever seen anyone in.
I can believe that.
Because the press was so heavy. I mean, he had newspaper journalists and even generals calling the house on Sunday. Like, it was crazy. And it was so stressful.
They needed a scapegoat.
It was unbelievable. And so I want to give fairness to, he was dealing with an enormous amount of chronic pain, and was also put in what I believe is one of the most stressful positions I've ever seen anyone in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that'll weigh on you.
And when I look back on that, it takes my breath to think about.
Yeah.
So there was a huge sort of you can't go from that high level of a stress for that prolonged period of time, in addition to being physically challenged, in addition to recovering from the TBIs and things. Because, if you're in an explosion, you pretty much have a TBI. Like, it's just, you're going to get your bell rung, right? So there was that component as well. and then all the chronic pain recovering. And so I look back on it and it's mind blowing. But yeah, so when the transition happened, there's no way to come out of that and not crash.
At all. I've been saying that because, I mean, I didn't have super stressful position at Walter Reed, but I did spend from the day I came in to my first unit, basically every other year I was deployed. You can't
Mhm.
operate like that. It just
No, you can't.
and then it all goes away. And mind
Hmm.
you, my mindset was, I knew that I was a career guy. I was going to be in fact, June 24th, which is coming up here in, 13 days, would be my
Hmm.
22-year mark. That was my original retirement date.
Yeah, that was
That
his
was,
too.
so for me, I knew that I was going to 22, and then I'm getting cut short at almost 13. And
Yeah, same
like,
thing.
it's just ripped away from you. It's just like,
Hmm.
you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about, holy shit, like I don't have plans anymore. And I don't know how to, I guess, find what I want to do in the civilian world, because this was my plan. I didn't have a plan B, I guess,
Yeah,
is the problem, right?
yeah. Well, and the other thing that I have such appreciation for too is that when you're in on active duty, there is such a strong culture that supports you. You know, one of the things that I experienced is like when we would move. When
Mhm.
we would move, he would step into a new unit and often would possibly know someone that knew of him or something, where there was a immediate favorable camaraderie and interaction, even new.
Mhm.
I, on the other hand, when we would move, I had to recreate it. If I had you build a life, right? You have your veterinarian that you like. You have your places you like to shop. You have your place that has the best smoothie, or like all the things that you create the structure to be able to have some stability,
Yeah.
right? And so every time we would shift, I felt like he would be still doing okay with the move because he could plug right into a supportive culture.
Hmm.
In DC, it was an interesting culture as a spouse. It was so different than when we were at Fort Lewis because you can live in so many different parts of this region. And so it was very difficult to find women's groups to attend. And even if I made a friend at one of them, they might live 2 hours away technically. And so it was hard to get together that way. And so that was the experience I always had is I felt like that first month after a shift, I was having to relay down everything brand new.
Right.
And and he had the support of that culture, which was amazing, right?
Hmm.
But when I look at that, I have a new appreciation now too for the loss of what that was when that came to an abrupt end.
Right.
Because he had had that in every transition until the final one.
Right. And not, I mean, you become accustomed to that, right? Being able to plug
Yes.
into a new unit, being able to, my wife says it all the time, like, you can make friends anywhere you go. I've had to
Yeah.
learn that skill, but in the
Mhm.
Army, it's not hard because you all have this one thing in common. I'm going to
That's it.
another infantry unit. I'm plugging into a platoon of infantry guys. So we all have the same job. We're all
Mhm.
working the same hours, training the same skills, right? Like, it's just easy to make that transition. And then obviously through conversation, you find that veterinarian, you find that smoothie place. One of the best kept secrets in Hinesville, Georgia, is this little Southern kitchen, right? Like,
Mhm.
you find things out like that through those networks. And
Yeah.
that's what I talk about when I talk about, the three major things is loss of identity, loss of purpose, and loss of community or network, or just
Big
lack
time.
of having a network. And those are the three things that constantly come up for service members in transition. And you saw that firsthand from a
Big time.
perspective that hasn't been shared here, where I didn't realize we do have that when we PCS every single time. And speaking to the spouses, you guys don't typically have that, right? Like, you said, meeting women at these groups in DC could be 2 hours away. Well, it's not feasible. You're not going to go hang out with them for 15
No.
minutes to drive 2 hours. You know what I mean?
No, it's just yeah. But in fairness to the soldiers, when you've gone a whole career where everywhere you've shifted, you've still had that camaraderie. When it's just gone, the
Mhm.
feeling of having the rug ripped out from underneath your feet, I think is just terrible, truly. You know, for me, when we moved to this region, I I really didn't succeed with the women's groups or the spouse groups. I failed utterly with them. So what I did was start a business networking group, and I made all of my friends became people I met through business and entrepreneurship. So I was still able to build a community and participate with communities for myself. And so by the time he transitioned out, I had that backstop,
Right.
but he just wiped out.
Off
So
cliff.
yeah, totally. And I don't think that people understand what that's really like for a person, because it's not only losing what has been available to you, but differently, if you don't have an innate ability to go out and create community and friendships, it's a whole skill set that you haven't really learned, and you haven't really needed to up until that moment.
Well, and I talk about that a lot. I use myself as a prime example of this. I joined at 17, so I was on the delayed entry program for a year.
Hmm.
As soon as I graduated high school, shipped to basic training, and within the first 10 months of being at my first unit, I was in Iraq, and I would be deployed every other year for that. So my identity, from leaving my parents' house to then the authority of the Army was be the best infantryman in support of the global war on terror for the United States Army that you can be. That is
Right.
my whole identity. I never had a chance to learn who I was without that, right? I didn't have
Hmm.
a college experience away from most authority, if you will, to develop a personality or whatever. I just became an infantry guy, grunt, a dumb grunt. I refer to myself as a dumb
Hmm.
grunt all the time because it really still resonates with me. That's what I was for so much of my life. And then you don't have that anymore. It's all completely gone. And to your point, you don't have the skills to go develop that. And so
Hmm.
I think this is cool because you've got all kinds of really awesome accolades. You're running You to Shine, and you're the director of Unconquerable Me. And so let's talk about all of those things and what your mission is with those. How did you found these? How did you come up with the ideas for these? And just give us the sauce. Give it all.
Okay, so you to shine, I'm not the founder. We do have an amazing founder of that company, Victoria Rader. I'm her CEO. Um, so I actually met her in 2015 through a business networking group. And at that time, I had my sales company. I was selling nutritional products to doctors' offices, and they were really good. And by the way, um, we were feeding a lot of them to Chris. That was immense in helping his recovery. Was having good nutrition. And one of the goals that I had early on after he got hurt was that I would be able to find the resources to best be able to help him.
Mhm.
And so that was a way that was something that I was able to do, and it aligned to what I already knew. I already had a baseline knowledge, because when you work with racehorses, you're basically feeding elite athletes. And so a lot of my training had been in nutrition, exercise physiology, and reproductive physiology, which is about balancing hormones and all those chemistries. So on a deep level, I understood the value of that in healing. Anyway, uh, I had become very, very good. I had become a top worldwide salesperson for that company, and I was training and developing for their international stage. But I was unhappy because I'm ambitious and I didn't want to just be top 20. I wanted to be like in the top five to number one.
Right.
So I've been looking for a business coach for me to help me with that. When Vika started working with me, it's a funny thing. I really thought that she'd been very successful in real estate sales. I really thought she was going to help me up my sales game. What she ended up doing was helping me heal my trauma.
Okay.
She had just stepped into this space of working with more intuitive healing modalities. She was at the beginning of developing what we now have as a company as is Free Me EFT. She was working with a lot of different intuitive healing and spirituality, and she was also training in quantum physics, which gives you understanding of energy. So I was surprised beyond belief in my first year of coaching with her. We were healing all of my trauma, not just going through things with Chris, but I had my own an immense amount of personal trauma even before that, right? Um, and so during that time, because I sat on 4 boards of directors for nonprofits, I helped start multiple networking groups around the region. I was doing training and development for them regionally as well. And so I had worked with thousands of people, and I had a lot of people asking me to go into coaching and consulting, which I was reluctant to do because it was scary. It was stepping into something that was unknown and knew how to do what I was doing. But after working with her for 2 years in 2017, right at the end of 2017, I decided to step into that world. And so I approached her because of all the things that I had run across in personal development, the tools used with me, I felt like were the most effective, the fastest, and the easiest. And so I was bugging her. I wanted to train in what she had trained in. And at that point, she had developed to where she was actually teaching and licensing people in the same modalities. So that was where that started. And I built a very successful coaching company between 2015, between 2018 and 2024, all by word of mouth.
That's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, all by
Yeah.
word of mouth. We had run radio ads all over the country and on Sirius XM and done all these amazing things, right? Participating with radio ad campaigns and running ads locally in the DC area on Sports Talk and WMAL. And I hated that. I hated feeling this phone call. So I really had an intention of building my next business all by word of mouth. And she had built You to Shine that way too. So I can truly say that we've built at least 2 successful coaching companies by word of mouth.
That's
Um,
awesome.
she continued to expand and was onboarding coaches to contract for her overflow. And so I became one of those. And after about a year of that, I was really looking at where things were going. And I was loving, loving, loving working with the other coaches because I had so much business sense at that point. And I just was loving it. And so she and I had a meeting one day, and I said, I think I want to take a larger role with the company at this point. And she said, do you want to be CEO? And I said, well, yeah, I do. So that was just kind of a done deal. So that's how that all came about.
So can you talk about some of those modalities that were helping heal your trauma? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have an idea of what some of them are, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm always interested because when I healed my own trauma through Heroic Hearts Project, going to Peru and sitting with
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca, it's not the ayahuasca itself. Yeah, it's a big part of it, but it's all the things that I learned about meditation, mindfulness, breath work, grounding,
Yeah.
yoga, all of these free tools that are available to us that have been dismissed as woo woo or taboo or whatever, or so I like to collect all of these tools and just put these out to the community, because these are things you can start today on your own right now after listening to Marla and I's conversation, and start your own healing journey. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those modalities that were helping you, that you then
Sure.
went and shared with others, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So how we're defining quantum personal development as a company is basically we're working with the energy of spirituality, and we are a very God-centric company, by the way. We're working with that energy, uh, and how it impacts the flow of energy through quantum, using quantum physics and universal laws principles, but then moving it into its practical application for people to be able to implement into their life for success and healing. Right? That's really the foundation of it. And so when you look at personal development as a whole, we're taught mindset over matter.
Mm-hmm.
Mind over matter. If you could just change your thoughts,
Yeah.
right, and change how you think, you'll influence the matter around you. What we've actually focused on is that will only take you so far. It's really about love over mind over matter.
Yes. 100%. Because
right?
that's what was wrong with me. I didn't love or respect myself.
That's it. That's it. And so when we really bring in that pure love, seeking for every single person to fully be the light they came here to be through
Mm-hmm.
that. And all of us did, right? Like you're doing something very unique in the world. I'm doing something very unique in the world. It's about our uniqueness on how we can help support each other through that, right? But the first thing that has to happen is we really have to feel worthy on a deep level, and
Yep.
that comes through love. And the more we let up, even if we even can let in one photon of light and love in to a space where it wasn't there before, I believe that healing happens.
I agree. Primarily because that was the big lesson I got from sitting with medicine was, I was consumed by darkness, and everything in life is about balance between light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're consumed by darkness, you develop that internal monologue that just beats you
Mm-hmm.
down. It's so not healthy for you. And I a lot of mine came from growing up, where we grew up, having people tell me I was less than, not capable, not
Mm-hmm.
smart, not ever going to make anything of myself because I chose to join the army. And we tend to hang on to those things, particularly as we're children growing up. Impressionable young minds, and so I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And this is all fascinating. That again, Marla and I haven't had a conversation before, and I've arrived at the same conclusions that she's using in quantum personal development, which I had never heard of
Mm-hmm.
until she came on the show. So
Yeah.
this is really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. So the tools that we use with that uh, is really just amazing, because anytime that we're working with a person and we're talking about helping them shift or change, it's really done through deep love. And we do use and access a lot of different meditation type things with the intuitive healing. The other modality that we have registered trademarked is called our Free Me EFT. And EFT, if you've ever been exposed to it, is tapping,
Mm-hmm.
is how it's generally referred to out in the world. It involves basically gently touching the different points in a sequence along the acupressure meridians. And it's designed to help release trapped emotion. So when you understand emotion from a particle perspective, let's say, think of it as energy in motion. Any emotion we have is an energy in motion through us, right? And when you look at the body is more space than anything else. Because if we were to break down from the cellular level to the molecular level to the atomic level, then you understand that the distance between an electron and the nucleus of an atom is greater than the distance between sun and earth proportionally.
That's
So
wild.
that's a lot of space. So when you think about it, when we have something happen, right? And this is so much the case for veterans. Like you have something happen that is a highly charging emotion,
Mm-hmm.
but there isn't the ability a lot of times in that moment to deal with that emotion. So we suppress it or
Compartmentalize it.
trap it,
Yep.
right? So where does it go? Where does it go?
That's a
It
good
gets
question.
stuck. Kind of, it to me energetically, and this is my perspective, it gets stuck in that space. And so when we use that technique, it helps to get the thing that is stuck and trapped to start to move again so it can begin to be released.
I actually this makes a lot of sense because we do you're talking about this space proportionally the distance between the sun
Mm-hmm.
and the earth is the same between the atom and the nucleus in our
Mm-hmm.
bodies. It means
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of negative space there just for these
There
things to
is.
go and hide out. And we all talk about compartmentalization and stuffing it into Pandora's box, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually Pandora's box is going to overflow. Those things at the most inconvenient times seem to find their way back to the surface. They find something to latch onto. So this makes perfect sense with what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So what we do with Free Me EFT that is particularly special is we not only are training people in the technique to help to utilize it, and it's such a simple technique. Like I use it all the time, right? I gave a keynote on last Friday, and I was nervous, so I'm in the bathroom. Tapping out the nervousness, right? Because it immediately, there's all kinds of studies. It immediately calms things down. The VA we even have a letter from the VA from 2014 talking about how it is an approved technique to help veterans with the stress from trauma
Amazing.
to release it. But what we did uniquely with Free Me that's a little different is we allow the client or the person who's receiving the healing to really follow what they need rather than having it scripted. And then additionally, we have a very special way that we also bring love and a different energy in to take the place of what was released. Because once you release that trapped emotion, you have an amazing opportunity to put something better back in. And that's what sets our Free Me EFT technique apart, is that it's registered and trademarked for those and copyrighted for those things that sets it apart from the other things that are out in the marketplace. And it's just immensely, immensely healing and valuable.
So what do you say to the naysayers who are like, this woman's full of shit, this stuff doesn't work, this is taboo, right? Because this isn't mainstream. Everybody's go to the doctor, get pills, and then what is it, like something like 9 years it could take to find the right concoction of pills to even return you to some semblance of normalcy. But that whole process, by the way, you become a zombie, a shell of yourself that still wants to kill yourself. In a veteran's case, I've seen it happen. Some of my mentors, whatever. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear. I really believe in free agency above everything else. So I never have a desire to try to convince another person. I also very much believe that all of us on a deep level know what's best and aligned for us. So I really don't deal with
You just don't give them
I know that sounds crazy, but it's not my job to convince or prove. But for those who feel like they're aligned and have an interest in learning more, I will sit and take on, a lot of times I'll take people through a complimentary discovery call and find out what they need. That's the most important thing, is find out what a person really needs. And then make sure that they either get set up with the right tools that we can utilize during a discovery call, or if it's not a good fit, try to help them find other resources that are. That's really it. So to be frank with you, I just don't deal with any naysaying. I don't need to go up against it. And the thing, all the things we offer through the company, it's either for you or it's not. And I will just love everybody that they find the best thing for them. That's really where I stand with it.
Don't waste your energy on it. It's not worth it. And you just meet people where they are, and show them what their options are. I've had to learn this through leading people down to Peru to do plant medicine, because I run up against the same thing, and sometimes it's I want to wring their neck, like look, but also understanding, like, again, free agency, what's best for you. The medicine's going to be here when you're ready, or if you're ready. And so, I can just meet you where you're at, tell you, and be an example of what it did to change my life and so many other people's lives. And you can take with, that information and do with it as you please. So, good for them.
And I'm sure you've experienced this, a running joke that we have all the time is free agency is a bitch. Sometimes. Because and here's how it plays out, and I guarantee, Adam, you've had this experience. You see the potential in someone, or you really see the possibility for them for healing, and they're not ready.
Yep.
And there's this part of you that's just like, let me
right now, I'm experiencing this right now with someone
and that is
close to me. Yes.
Yes, it's like, let me love you, right? But but that's still forcing the energy on that person.
Yep.
And so that's kind of our running joke, because when you can see that and you know you have access to tools and things, there is that natural tendency. But the most important thing also is to honor a person's free agency, including their no, or especially their no. Because if there's one thing I've learned, is that one of the worst things about trauma is there wasn't safety to say no.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
and that's
honestly,
important.
some of the best things I have done for people is just let them say no to me. And that in and of itself can be a healing.
Yep. Because it gives them that power back, right? That they
Yeah,
didn't necessarily have
100%.
before. Yeah. No, and
100%. But the internal struggle is
oh yeah, I want to wring your freaking
love
neck.
me,
Like, let's
please.
come on. I'm
Yeah,
giving you. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm living this right now. With,
Sure, anybody who's ever cared about anybody has lived this.
yeah.
But there is that moment where you realize you're forcing your belief, your energy, your desire on a person who isn't ready. And that's the key thing. The desire to heal has to start within. We cannot force that on anybody. A person has to want it.
Yep. Let's talk about Unconquerable Me. What is that?
Mhm.
What's the significance behind the way that that is actually written out? I'm eager to hear about this.
Oh, I love this. I love that you asked me this. So you'll see that the Me brand throughout all of our You to Shine branding, and we have 17 coaches on the team, and each coach has a unique concept that they're bringing through Me. So mine is Unconquerable Me. We have a Master Me. We have a Connect Me. We have a Breathe Me. Right, really cool. But the significance of that, when it's written out, it's a little M and a big E. The little m represents our physical, our survival self, right? It's the mortal matter.
Mm-hmm.
Mortal matter manifesting materially, right? But the E is that big energy, that eternal essence that expands us. And so that's why we have a little m and a big E. The reality, we're both. We'll never get away from the reality we're both.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will always have this physical body that has such a strong desire to survive, and a subconscious that's throughout everything that wants to make sure we survive and don't experience pain. And that is constantly present.
Oh
So
yeah.
even as we start to grow or change, as we grow, we're going to a new place, or as we heal, we're going to a new place we haven't been before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The mortal matter is like, no, we
Yeah.
have not been here.
I'm not doing this. Yeah.
That part of you that walks by the cave and goes, don't go in there, right? That's always there. And it needs to be, because we live on the earth and we have to deal with a lot of things in the world, right? We need that survival self to be high functioning. It's important. But the key to any growth or change is when we can surrender the fear and the limitations that brings to faith and love. And it is a constant, ongoing process. And I know a lot of veterans don't like the word surrender. I don't mean give up, I mean let go.
Yes.
And they're two very different energies.
I
I don't
love
like the
this.
word surrender either. For years I didn't like it because I didn't understand it.
Right.
But I can tell you the reason why it's Unconquerable Me is, have you ever heard of the poem Invictus?
No, I'm not a big poetry guy, but
Okay,
I would love for you to share it.
I love it. The poem Invictus is actually Latin for unconquerable. It was written by a man named William Ernst Hensley, who was a sailor who actually got gangrene in his leg, got a bad infection in his leg, and had to have it amputated, and then all of the pain of that, right? And so you're probably familiar with the poem, you just don't know what it is, because it's actually one of the most quoted poems in the English language.
Well,
But
probably.
it starts out of the dark that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I
I
think
do know
whatever
this.
gods may be,
Yeah.
for my unconquerable soul.
Yeah. I have heard.
Right? And I love that poem because it so represents, it talks about, having, not winced or cried aloud, right? And having my head bloody and broken but unbowed, right?
Mhm.
It's so beautiful because it is that depth of understanding that there's that moment. And I think it happens for all of us, sometimes repeatedly, but there's that moment where you've been knocked down so hard and you don't think you're going to get up again. And
Yeah.
I've experienced it many times. And there's almost this point where you kind of give up,
Hmm.
right? There's that moment where you're like, do I really want to get up this time or do I want to just stay down? We've all had that. And then somehow you find something comes in and shifts, and you get up again. So, what is that? All right. That to me is what surrender is. In that moment where you feel you have nothing left and you let go, something comes in and brings you back, helps bring you back.
That's so
And
good.
that to me is the unconquerable soul concept. And that to me is how I see every veteran.
This is awesome. I like the what you did with the M and the E, particularly having an understanding that you're rooted in quantum physics as part of your thing. And what do we know? What does physics say? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Like it's just ever
Right?
present, right? So the big
Mm-hmm.
E making sense. Like, and then
Yeah,
you talking about the little M. To me in the plant medicine world, that's kind of your ego protecting you, not letting you step through that door to the
exactly.
unknown. And that's kind of what we I don't like the term ego death when associated with plant medicine. I like it more like your ego has taken over the seat that you're supposed to be sitting in, and you need to put
That's
your
it.
ego back in its place. Because the ego is there to protect us, and it does do a very good job of that. But it can be overprotective, right? Like helicopter mom.
Well, it's always there. I used to joke, years ago, but really before I got exposed to a lot of this stuff, I used to always joke. When I would talk with groups of business people, I would tell them, your egos are huge. And they would like act all insulted. But here's the deal, dude, to start a business, you have to actually believe that you have something to offer or something that you can do or create that's better than what anybody else has done.
Yeah.
It takes
So you
a
have to have
little,
some kind of ego,
you know,
right?
what do you want to call that, right? You know, I started, I've started in jujitsu at the age of 50, which is a little crazy, but I know how hard it was to walk in the door and try that. And I watch, when people walk in for the first time, but and that's always a little bit of a component, right? Is getting over the egotism because you're coming in, you're like,
Yeah.
but you have to, in a way, to get through that first hurdle, and
So
so it's
this is so
there.
awesome that you're telling this story about starting jujitsu at the age of 50. I was just in a entrepreneur jujitsu mastermind last week where where somebody literally what you just said, he started at the age of 60. And not only did he
Wow.
start at the age of 60, but the first week of that was him just driving there and convincing himself to walk in the door.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm not in jujitsu yet. I want to be. I'm coming off a hip surgery, so I've got to like really take care of that.
Gotta take
But
care of you.
I'm seeking it because I need to go be humbled. Because like
Mhm.
you're saying, to start and go out on your own and cut your own path in this world against society's wishes, against everything that we're taught growing up, does take a certain amount of ego. And so for me, I want it to humble myself because I am a big guy.
Mhm.
I'm a big, strong guy. Everybody, my whole life has looked at me like, you're the big, strong guy. Like you can handle yourself, this, that, and the other. It's like, well, there's always somebody bigger and stronger. There's always somebody that can humble me. And
Or
we need
somebody 5'2" and 120
a
pounds who
hundred
could just
percent.
flip you right over.
And that's just it. I mean, I really like I think that's another kind of just form of healing for me is to go
Mhm.
and humble myself. So I love that you're telling that story because you're not the only one who has done that at
No.
an older age, and it speaks to the challenge of how do I better myself? Well, I better myself by taking on these challenges, letting my ego aside and walking through those doors, stepping on the mat for the first time and getting embarrassed. Like you're gonna get
Yeah.
embarrassed. It's gonna
Oh,
suck.
you are. And I will say this though. I really want to honor the studio where I go is amazing.
Mhm.
And I go to a daytime class that is a lot of former military businessmen, some cops, a lot of people. And it's pretty much, I'm usually the only girl there. And I really want to honor the folks that I roll with. They protect me, teach me, mentor me. They take such good care of me. And so, yes, it is hard and it's humbling, but I also have felt so valued and protected and safe in that space. That alone for me has been incredible.
I
That
love
has been healing for me.
that.
And
Yeah.
so I really want to give credit to the guys and the girls that I roll with, because that is there too, and that also is probably as healing for that ego as anything else.
Yep.
To know that total strangers have got your back in a
Yeah.
whole other is really cool. Really
And
cool.
you found a new community too,
Yeah.
right? Like that. I think that's another important aspect. It's not just learning some self-defense skill. It's not just going and humbling yourself and putting your ego in check, but you're also building this community of people who think like you, who want to be better, and
Mhm.
like, of course that's infectious, right? Like, of course that
Yeah.
helps you become a better person. Marla, we're running out of time, so I would love for you
Okay.
to tell everybody how they can find all the awesome work that you're doing. Reach out to you if they're interested in your coaching programs, how they can find that stuff. Just put all your stuff out there so that we can send people your way.
Amazing. So you can find me at our company website, which is youtashine.com, and that is YU, the number 2, shine, SHINE.com. Feel free to reach out there, and I'd be happy to return your email or your call. The other 2 things I want to share that we have right now that I think are extraordinary tools. One is called mygiftoffer.com. What mygiftoffer.com is, you can go and you can download a free ebook. And in that free ebook are the 50 most limiting beliefs we've discovered that people have over work with thousands of clients, and the antidote to help release and free them into something that will better serve you. And that uses our free Me EFT technique, and there's instruction with it. And that is completely free. Now, you will put in your email, so you go on our email list doing so. But the free resource is so worth it. Our goal is to help impact 1 million or more lives this year with just that free resource. And then the last thing is we have an app. And our app has amazing things like 3-minute healing meditations, blessings, as a component in it that helps you heal grief, which is incredible, by the way. A component in it that helps connect you to more freedom from within. And so I love the app. I use it regularly. One of my favorite things to do with it is to click on a grief button and do a healing that releases grief in just a matter of minutes, and then go to the freedom button and bring in more freedom for myself. That's one of my favorite ways to use that app. But that app is Empower-Me app, and it's a purple icon with a gold lettering, but it's Empower-Me.
I love that. Marla, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for giving me an hour of your time to talk about this stuff. And man, some powerful stuff. I might even have to go download the ebook for myself. I want to try the tapping stuff really, really bad. So thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, Marla Ballard, please reach out if anything resonated with you. Don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, and download this. Really help me get this in front of our brothers and sisters so that they can see examples of, getting out of the military. It doesn't have to be the end of everything, and there is a way forward. You're also not alone in what you're going through. And until next week, take care, everybody. We'll see you with another awesome episode.
Thank you.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.